So, Adi, thank you very much for giving me this interview. Ovo ćemo u režiji, što bi rekli. So the first question would be, what were your expectations before this trip to Bosnia and Herzegovina, and what is your experience after this trip? So what have you learned? What information have you gathered? What was the most that struck you during this trip?
Well, I was very much looking forward to visit Jajce, where I was actually professionally for the first time, and I really enjoyed meeting young politicians, young activists, but also people who are basically running the city, and to discover the dynamic that happens there on different issues. To be honest, I was surprised with how dynamic NGO sector in Jajce is, and how diverse the topics are that are close to their heart, and things that they fight for. I kind of expected, but it was good to see that they themselves, though disappointed with the overall situation in the country, were able to point to concrete things that they have been doing, concrete issues that they've been fighting for, and results that they've managed.
We have met youth representatives from NGOs and from political parties. We heard their complaints, we heard their view on their futures. So maybe to comment a bit about that, what was the most important message that you have heard from the youth, from Jajce and from Mostar?
Well, it wasn't surprised that young people want to live in more stable country, in more predictable country with a bit of economic prosperity that pays attention to both worker rights, environment, and democratic, pluralistic society. But it was confirmed to me yet again that what Bosnia and Herzegovina, and I think region as general, is missing is politicians that are willing to run for elections, win elections, and are willing to then use the instruments of power that they have as politicians in power to change public policies and to change things. I think in Canton Sarajevo we've met a couple of younger politicians with international experience that have returned to Bosnia and Herzegovina, and that are actually doing that without necessarily knowing that they are doing that. So it was inspiring to listen about concrete things, concrete issues that they are working on, and that gives to a certain extent hope that Bosnians and Herzegovinians in general more and more are willing to discover the politics as an instrument to change things on the ground.
Today we have met with one of the presidents of Bosnia and Herzegovina, with Mr. Komšić. He expressed his views upon the new crisis which developed in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So maybe to comment about the political side now. So how do you see the politics in Bosnia right now? Do you see a positive future or a negative future? What can we expect from the future when it comes to this crisis with Milorad Dodik and Republika Srpska?
Well, in Bosnia and Herzegovina we had, since the war ended, competing narratives about the future of the country, competing ideas of how the country should look like, whether there should be a country at all. And we've seen struggles and fights between them. But what for 25 years we had was an EU and international community that has had impact, that was capable to move things in the country. And I think what I gather from our talks in Sarajevo is that the EU, with enlargement process being broken as it is, seems not to have a power in the country, and that the narrative about Western Balkans fully integrating into the EU, erasing borders or making them less visible, bringing prosperity and liberal democracy to the country is minimized to the minimum, and that the narratives and the stories that we hear here today are those about the wars, about arming, about who has better advantage on the field, and it's a return to the dark realism of 1980s and 1990s. And I fear that unless we manage, even our group, to convince the EU member states to agree on a policy that's working for them, but that it's also inspiring reformers in the Western Balkans, we will see things get worse, not get better.